Welcome to Minerva Meets. I'm your host, Sonal Chandler, and this is episode 4. Today, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity and developing a strategy and a roadmap for your organization. And to help me break down this complex topic, I've invited Jeff Englander to the show. With a career spanning over 25 years in sales, Jeff brings a wealth of experience and a proven track record of successfully executing contracts totaling nearly $2 billion. His corporate journey includes positions with industry giants such as GE Information Services, GE Capital, US Bank, and JP Morgan. His expertise revolves around selling application hosting, network communication, and banking with a focus on supply chain financial management SaaS applications. In the startup realm, Jeff has dedicated 9 years to sales with a primary focus on cybersecurity, governance, risk, compliance, fintech, and sustainability offerings. His startup portfolio includes ventures in endpoint security, file security, managed detection response, NIST ISO compliance, sustainability, and blockchain. Jeff's commitment to knowledge sharing is evident not only in the fact that he's joined this podcast, but also in his creation of Sales Professional Class, offering a valuable experience for industry professionals. Welcome to the show, Jeff. That was a mouthful, and I really appreciate you joining. So thank you.
Sonal, thank you. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, so like I said earlier, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, and that is always a complex topic. And my goal today is to really break it down for those who are trying to get started and who are, or perhaps already started, but maybe need some help navigating how to develop a roadmap or a strategy for their organization. So I thought a good place for us to start would be to really just kind of at a very high level introduce what we mean by cybersecurity and explain why it matters to organizations.
It matters to everyone, personally as well as professionally. Every organization needs to have a defense to prevent, if you would, a cyber attack. At the end of the day, there's various percentages out there. I've seen the SEC has come up with the percentage that 60% of small businesses fail within 6 months after a cyber breach. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
And I think the number goes up to about 80% after like 2 years. Why? Because customers leave. Customers are, if you would, demanding that the businesses they deal with keep their data secure. And if it ends up on the dark web, they're going to say, forget it, I'm not going to stay with you, we're going else. And that causes business failure. So for no other reason, please implement cybersecurity processes and procedures. It's important to your business.
Absolutely. If we wanted to give somebody who has zero knowledge of cybersecurity, is it, putting a padlock on their server room? What does cybersecurity really mean?
Cybersecurity goes into many facets, if you would, but it's really about protecting the assets you have in your business, and that in software and hardware related. And we can go into that in a little bit further. But let me explain 4 things. Why is someone who's a cyber attacker interested in you? And you could think to yourself, nah, I'm too small, I'm irrelevant, whatever it might be. You can come up with all those items, but you know what? They're interested in you, and there's 4 reasons. 1, they want to steal your money, right? If for no other reason, if they can get into your bank account and take out the cash that you have there, that's great for them. If they can't do that, they want to take your data. Your corporate data, whatever could be of value on the marketplace, and then they can sell it, again, getting money. Or they can hold it for ransom, getting money, right? So they can restrict your own access to your own data through ransomware. Access to you have in your business access to various other companies. So your customers or your suppliers may be very valuable to them. You may think, oh, I'm not valuable, I'm just a plumber, or I'm an electrician, or I'm a lawyer, or whatever the reasons. I'm just a small guy. Why would anyone care about me? Well, they may not care about you, but they care about the accesses you have to other companies, and they can use you to get to those other companies and get valuable data. And the last one is, and no one really knows about this, but Bitcoin, it takes an incredible amount of processing power. And a lot of attackers, and could be nation states, use other companies' processors, computer processors, to mine Bitcoin. It's incredible. I couldn't believe when I heard. So those are 4 reasons why you need cyber defenses.
Yeah. And I want to be, really mindful of the fact that, our intent here is certainly not to put doom and gloom, right? But rather educate and inform. So we're not necessarily saying that, the world is out to get you. But
Yeah.
what we're saying is really to protect yourself, right? Be out there,
Protect
protect
yourself,
your cyber position, if you will.
protect yourself, protect your business.
Exactly, exactly. So there's this concept called cybersecurity hygiene. Can you dive into it a little bit more and talk about, a few tips for maintaining a secure digital environment?
Yeah, I refer to it as a comprehensive security plan. And what do I
Mhm.
mean by that? Cybersecurity hygiene is truly a plan, an overall plan. That's the title you put on the cover sheet, if you would.
Yeah,
And there are four things I really want people to understand when you first start out. Identify what's on your network.
yeah,
It's amazing how many companies are still trying to figure that out. And a lot of it has to do with mergers and acquisitions or dispositions of businesses. You have servers coming and going, you have accesses coming and going. You need to keep an active list, active asset inventory of what's on your network. And that includes what you have managing in the cloud.
yeah,
So you have what's on your network, why it's there, the purpose, who owns it, right? The ownership. Some department or a person may own the responsibility of having it there. And the last thing is who has the user rights to
yeah.
it. Those four things have to be well documented. And that's a good first step in hygiene.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have actually gone through that exercise myself, and it's interesting, especially in smaller organizations, it's just easy to give everybody access, right? And sometimes you've got multiple people who have admin access, right? So they've got the authority to sort of do everything, and it's really important to start thinking about role-based access control, right? Like who needs to have access and why. Well, I'd love to start talking about building a roadmap, right? Like, how do you go about creating a cybersecurity roadmap? And really, what I'd like to explain is this process of creating this roadmap and why it's important to an organization as they're trying to put their security strategy in place.
As I said, the roadmap is all about a couple of things, right? The assessments, uh,
Hmm.
understand what's going on in your environment. What you really truly have an independent or an internal assessment to go on. And why is that important? It's because you could be subjected, depending on the business you're in, depending on the industry you're in, to external regulations,
Hmm.
financial services, healthcare, just to name two of very important ones. And they require you to understand what's going on in your environment. Or Defense Department, if you're doing business with the DoD or DHS, Department of Homeland Security,
Hmm.
they require you to have these types of assessments, and then they'll audit you.
Right.
So before you get audited, you really need to have an assessment because that's one of the first things they look at, the auditor saying, let me see your assessment. The second thing is truly goals. What are you trying to achieve in your protection, your defenses,
Right.
and all that has to be elaborated in a plan. And this way, you have a direction for you to go.
Yeah.
The strategy development, implementation, reviewing and adjusting, all those things are really all about a good, if you would, path forward. That's the roadmap. How are you going to get from where you are today to where you need to be?
Yeah. One thing about the assessment is even if you've never had an assessment done for your organization, I think it's important to at least get a baseline, right? Even if you have a poor security score, that's okay because it's a place to start. And you're only going to go up from there. So it's always good to sort of understand what your existing position, your security posture is at that time. And then you can start implementing and attacking the low-hanging fruit to start increasing your assessment score. And in terms of goals, I think that it's important to sort of understand, what kind of risk are you willing to take on as an organization versus not? You might be an organization that doesn't really have a lot of external interactions. And so certain risks, you might have a larger appetite for that. But then you also have to sort of understand the repercussions of those risks, right? And then as an organization, figure out what is your threshold for some of those risks. Have you come across some of that, Jeff?
It's interesting you said, and I like to illustrate what you just said in a little story, real short story. I was at a demonstration, a physical piece of hardware a friend of mine invented that sits between the network controller and the internet, the public internet, and
Hmm.
basically monitors everything going through. So we sat down with this small company. It was a managed services provider. They had 50 companies as clients.
Hmm.
And every one of their clients, every one of their suppliers that they work with, every one of their employees were all within the United States. So we asked them, well, if that's the case, why do you have IP addresses and other types of identifiers that we found representing 38 countries?
Oh
And they
my
go,
goodness.
what are you talking about? And they go, well, right now as we speak, and we put up on the screen uh, the list of 38 users that were present in that network as was live in real time. And they were like, they were in your network.
Wow.
38 countries from China to Russia to Brazil to Germany. And I can't, India, I think, was there too. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, there were people in their network that were from outside the US. Did you realize that? And they go, and so the story is that they didn't know that. And we
Hmm.
were able to point it out and we moved forward. But
Right.
they were a really small company. They had only 50 customers, right? 50 customers, and many of them were very small businesses themselves. And everything was in the US, and yet they had basically users infiltrating their network from representing 38 countries.
Wow.
Really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing when it comes to building a roadmap and trying to figure out, okay, what is it that's right for our organization? I don't think you have to really boil the ocean, right? Like start small, right? Putting in some policies, they don't have to be these like extravagant policies or extravagant procedures, really start and trying to figure out what is right for your organization. And these policies and these procedures, they don't have to be these long-winded documents that nobody is going to read. They could be short and sweet, to the point, and just to sort of help starting your organization get into the mindset of being a cyber safe environment.
That last point was very important.
Yeah.
A mindset of a cyber safe, and that takes training. And there
Yeah.
are 6 points I wanted to bring up. That was the sixth point, but I want to bring it to the top.
Sure.
If you can train your employees and also the other people who have access to your network to say, listen, this is how we do things. This is how we handle accesses, data access, what we do with the data. Make sure it's not downloaded to your laptop, but rather it stays on the servers, whatever your process or policies are. Please
Hmm.
let everyone know. From little things, from managing a password, right? And all the things you got to do to make sure you manage the password properly. It should be documented. And you're absolutely right. We shouldn't have a document that sits on a shelf after
Right.
it's done. That does
Right.
nobody any good. And there's 6 points I'd love to be able to bring up in the roadmap. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that your data needs to be backed up and the frequency and where it's going to be backed up, where it's stored, all that has to be documented, and
Hmm.
then maintain your logs. It's so important that the company maintains a log that says, here's, yes, the backup was completed, it was successful, it was done on this date. Right? It's really not that difficult.
And if you don't mind, I just wanted to interject one
Sure.
point about the backup is make sure you test it, right? Like there's no point in having a backup if you can't bring it back, you know? So make sure you can test the backup and that it works, right?
You're absolutely right. The backup must work and must be successful, and that should be a part of the process of how you test. So that
Yeah,
has to be documented too, and it should be not just tested once in the beginning, but
right.
ongoing.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, and the second thing I wanted to bring up is properly install or deinstall hardware on your network. What I mean by that is you should just have processes and procedures of how you add a piece of hardware, and then also how you pull one out that's outdated. So if
Yeah.
something is old, you need to remove it from your network because it could be a vulnerability. And when you do, how you do that, all that process, what you do with the data that's stored on that old device,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be, have it documented. Firewalls and antivirus software, they all have to be updated. They all have to be kept up to date. There's all kinds of great choices out there. There's consultants that can help you make those choices. There's staff that you can hire that can help you make those choices. But those are things you need to take a look at. We touched on password rules and processes. Multi-factor authentication is
Yes.
very common today. Even on those of you who have an email, personal email that's on Gmail, for example, there is authenticator that Google uses
Mm-hmm.
through YouTube. Right, that's what I do. But also in Microsoft, there's authentic. They have an authenticator app. The point is this: it's easy to get to, it's easy to use.
Yeah.
Anyone can use it. It's self-explanatory in many cases. And the last point is we touched on is training. Make sure that all those points above, that your employees are fully informed on what they're supposed to do. And I asked this one last thing. One of the threats we have is what we refer to as insider threat.
Yeah.
And when you document all these things and restrict the users to what they should be doing to do their work, right? You need to know if someone leaves the organization, what they knew and what accesses they have so they can turn those accesses off, right? It's so important that someone's last day, all those accesses be turned off and it has to be documented.
Yeah, we call those onboarding and offboarding processes, right? So as you're onboarding a new employee, making sure that they actually can get to the things so that they can become productive quickly. And then the offboarding is just as important, right? Making sure that as they're leaving the organization, that access to specific systems and tools are removed so that who knows, hopefully the employee isn't coming back to do any harm, but that so just that you're protecting yourself as an organization so that does not happen.
And you're protecting the employee too. The
Yes.
person,
Yeah,
right? They said, I have no access, I don't want access. And so you're protecting the employee as well.
absolutely. One thing I wanted to highlight is the whole review and adjust process, right? Like we talked about doing an assessment, even if you have a very poor security posture and it's a baseline that you're establishing. Putting some goals in place and telling yourself, okay, we're going to review again in 6 months or in a year, so that you're continuing to assess where you are and evolving that security practice within your organization is really key. And, I recommend getting the help of a third party if you don't have staff internally that comes in, is able to do the assessment and then help you build a program to continuously review and adjust your program as you move forward.
It is true that the assessment is so important because you internally can figure out what's wrong and then you be able to address those issues.
Yeah.
Because at some point, someone's going to come in and audit you. Um,
Yes.
and it could be a regulatory entity, right? It could be a private entity that's doing on behalf of your compliance to those regulations. And it also could be just simply trying to secure cyber insurance, which a
Yeah.
lot of companies need today because of the threats to their business. They have to be able to cover the cost of the repair of an incident. They also have to be able to cover the cost of some sort of litigation that could happen or fines that could happen after the fact.
Yeah. I
So,
mean,
yeah, they need to have those. Those assessments are important. The first question I think the auditors always ask is, "Let me see your assessment."
yeah, absolutely. And that point about cyber insurance is so key because you could be involved in some type of data breach, not even because you intentionally did something, but unintentionally, and still be responsible for the loss of data and potential fines associated to that. So it's really important to have that coverage. So if you don't, please call your insurance company and get cyber insurance. One of the things that I wanted to also touch on is when developing this roadmap, how important it is to ensure that all of the stakeholders within the organization are involved in building that roadmap, right? That it's not just something that needs to happen in a vacuum in an organization, but that everybody is actively vested in building that roadmap and actively vested in the security of the organization, because I think that helps with implementation later down the road and as you're kind of getting this off the ground.
Yeah, the buy-in is the right term I would like to use. It
Yeah,
makes sure that everybody in the C-suite buys into the fact that our company needs to be secure, one.
yeah,
And two is that they then take that mindset, the buy-in, and bring it into their organization, the respective organization.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
employees need to hear that the top management believes in this and it's a part of your culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Making it part of your culture is so key, right? Like whether it's a marketing effort internally, where there's flyers if you're in an office, or there's regular training. All of that is part of the program, and
It is
all.
a part of the program. You're absolutely right. And training is key. I ask everyone in the C-suite to make sure that their employees undergo regular training, not once a year, but some sort of a rhythm that they go through
Yes.
where several times a year is just a reminder. Don't post the username and password of your Wi-Fi on the wall. I've seen that countless times. And I'm like, I cringe, and I really want to rip the piece of paper off the wall, but I'm really probably not supposed to when I go into my doctor's office or go
Yeah.
into a government entity, and I've seen that happen. I won't tell you which one, but the point is this: it's people post this. Oh yeah, here's our Wi-Fi username, and here's our password. Please use it. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Yes, education is so important, and it's not to beat people up. That's important. It's really just to your point of a knowledge share.
Yeah.
That's why it's important, and it's a part of your culture that to keep your data safe.
Absolutely. In fact, that just brings me to the point of, I want to make sure that we state that cybersecurity, it's an ongoing process, right? It's not something that you create, you build a couple of policies, you give a little bit of training, you set some goals, and then that's it, right? I think it's important to remember that it's a continuous, ongoing process. And this roadmap that you build, it's really a living document because there's going to be new threats. There are new technologies and there's new business objectives, right? So it's this rhythm of it's about getting into a rhythm of constantly reviewing these items and adapting to these different changes.
Sonal, you're absolutely correct. And on a couple of points, I want to make sure people understand that the threat is a constant.
Yeah.
And when you have constant threats to your business, you have to keep up to date on your infrastructure and how you protect it.
Yeah.
As new tools come out, AI is a great example. As new tools come out to protect this, also, unfortunately, attackers who will use the same tools to if you would harm you, and you
Hmm.
have to keep on top of it. Your first roadmap will probably look nothing like the one you have 5, 10 years down the road. Everything is it's a constant, but it's also a good thing because things change
Yeah.
and you have to change with it.
Absolutely. And I think, I think I must have mentioned it earlier, but change management in managing how you implement a cybersecurity program within your organization is key. I know that I used to have a lot of challenges with trying to get people to take the training, right? Because the training is always sort of the last thing when you've got employees who are so busy. But, getting them to take the training and, really take it seriously is key. Well, let's pivot a little and start talking about cybersecurity strategies. So, in my mind, I think of the strategy really as the execution plan, right? So you've built this roadmap, and then how do you really execute that and, focus on, protection, detection, response, and recovery mechanisms and for your organization? um, how do you operationalize that roadmap into a strategy that's really effective for your organization?
I always say metrics mean everything.
Yes.
And so from the C-suite down, I think the CEO should say, he or she should say that we are going to measure you and your organization, how you take your plan and
Yeah.
execute, right?
Yeah.
Put metrics in place that say you are responsible for this, and here is what it is, and then explain it and then train. But all the metrics are in place to measure how well you're doing against your plan. You can put all the best plans out there, but if you don't put metrics around them, then you don't know if they're really going to be executed or not. And if they're not executed, then you are at risk of having your data stolen.
I know I'm putting you on the spot here, Jeff, but can you give a few examples of some key metrics that might be useful for an organization who's just getting started?
For organizations just getting started, just the mere fact that you have retained a consultant or hired employees who know cybersecurity is a huge step forward.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then what they do is that they put together the plan. That's a metric, right? That they put together a plan, and is it actionable, right?
Hmm.
And then on top of that, what you want is then execution among the employees. Are they trained? Did they get up to speed on certain items in that training? Did they
Hmm.
do it in a timely manner? Those things should be measured. And when they're measured, people now say, oh, well, my job is now, one of my requirements, I need to take this training. You have to
Right.
take it seriously. And the
Right.
more and you have to explain why, as a C-suite member, they have to explain why it's so important to everybody. When you bring in your own device and you hook, you attach yourself to the network, well, that could be a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Of data exfiltration, or more importantly, having someone having access now to things that they shouldn't have access to. When you
Yeah.
have guests coming in, these are things that you have to have policy around, and then you have to execute and you have to practice. Because when you don't, it could cause a security alert in an audit. What does that mean? It means that if there is a problem, it has to be raised, and then that's referred to as a security alert. You don't
Hmm.
want to be on the receiving end of that security alert.
Right.
And so all I'm asking is you need to be aware in your business, everyone from the CEO to the summer interns and everyone in between, temporary work, permanent work, they need to understand how to protect the data
Yeah.
and how to protect the hardware, the accesses that your company has. So this way, you're not compromised. You don't want to
Yeah.
be on the front page of newspapers.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about some tools and technology that can kind of help with implementing a cybersecurity strategy. Do you have any favorites or anything that you would recommend or that you have used in the past?
What I always like to do is talk about at the high level. We
Sure.
talked earlier about firewalls, right? We
Yeah.
talked earlier about antivirus software. These are so important to have in place for as a first step to make sure that you put a moat around your business. That's what I
Hmm.
refer to as a firewall. Now, it's true that many sophisticated attackers can get through, right? That's why firewalls are updated on a regular basis. So it's not just important to have a firewall, it's also important to make sure that they're updated. That when there's a patch that's available because they've found a vulnerability, that you implement that patch.
Yeah.
Especially in antivirus software as well. Make sure that the latest and greatest, if you would, releases are installed on your network. Everything, all your apps, they are regularly updated. Zoom is a great example of a third party, if you would, video conferencing app. And they run, I can't remember how many uh, releases they've issued since they first had their first installation. It's and all I'm asking you to do is to make sure that you are on the latest release, even
Yeah.
right down to your smartphone. Right, I put out a post on LinkedIn that said the latest iPhone is out there, and they closed or they managed to close two vulnerabilities for 0 day attacks, right? So what we want to do is and I put that out, please update your iPhone right away,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
So these are things that you do on a business level and a personal level. Make sure you have firewalls that are in place. Make sure you have antivirus in place. Make sure that your apps are all up to date and released. And if you could do those just few things, it's amazing how well you can be protected.
Yeah, and I think those are great points. And I will say, speaking from experience, I used to work for smaller organizations, and some of these things can be overwhelming, right? Because you don't have enough staff to do some of these things. And these updates come out fairly regularly. But if you can get into the habit of always making sure that the security vulnerabilities are addressed first, then you can make a decision on whether some of the other things need to be updated immediately or not, but make sure that you address all of the security updates. And I think that will take your organization a long way.
It will. If you can eliminate many of the vulnerabilities, and vulnerabilities sometimes just simply you haven't updated the latest release of that software
Hmm.
that you use on an everyday basis. That could be a challenge to your users. It could be a challenge to your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that I've seen organizations, and I hope every organization is doing this, but I'm not going to assume. Let's talk a little bit about monitoring and sort of the response to monitoring. I think there's a lot of software out there that allows you that helps kind of monitor your environment. But sometimes sort of how it's configured, if it's bringing up every single thing as a threat or it starts becoming noise, right? Like, and then you find your staff is starting to ignore the alerts, and then you can't figure out, okay, when do I really need to take action versus not, right? So, I think it's important to really implement monitoring, and make sure that you're using some best practices around how it's implemented so that you don't fall into this situation. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jeff?
What you're referring to is called managed detection and response.
Hmm.
And the whole idea is monitoring your network. Either you do it yourself or you have it outsourced. And there's plenty of firms out there who manage this for you or can provide software to you if you have the staff internally to address that very issue. One,
Yeah.
there are a lot of alerts that could happen in a given day, in a given 24-hour period. Where do you go first? There are services that are available that are called threat intelligence that help you handle and manage that, or allow a firm to do it for you. So there are firms who will call themselves managed security services provider,
Yeah.
MSSP, and that's what they do for a living, is manage that for you. So if indeed you don't have a big staff, and most small companies don't, you
Yeah.
have the option of outsourcing that to a third party. In addition to that, there are several different variations on managed detection and response and what they do, right? So they can identify, they can also contain the threat,
Hmm.
and then they can resolve it. Some, do all three. Some do one or two. That's the questions you need to ask: is how do you manage when there's a threat? How do you
Yeah.
detect it first of all, and then how do you manage it? How do you contain it, and then how do you get rid of it? Right? You have to contain it. You have to stop it in its tracks, and then you have to purge it.
Yeah.
And not every company does that. So those are the type of questions you need to ask, and it's great if you can retain a consultant outside person or firm who can help you manage those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a key point, the managing piece, right? Because enlisting the help of a third party, you want to make sure that you're getting some of that end-to-end assistance because you're paying for that, right? You're paying for someone to sort of help you assess your organization, build a framework for your organization, a security framework. And then in the event of a breach, what do? You want to make sure that somebody is there to help navigate that because it can become really confusing because there's so much involved. Oh, we've got to contact our insurance company, and then they've got a list of questions that they're going to ask you, and how do you address that? Or, internally, if you're trying to work on, you had mentioned earlier healthcare and the financial sector, there's a lot of compliance and there's a lot of regulation. I mean, there's like, let's talk about HIPAA for a second, right? That you've got to make sure that your environment internally is is secure and following certain practices just to even be considered in healthcare, right? So you need somebody that has expertise. So if you are, a healthcare organization, I definitely recommend partnering with somebody that really understands that space.
I would recommend when you first start out that you seek advice from either a consultant who's in this every day, or even within the government entities such as
Hmm.
NIST, which is a part of the Department of Commerce. They came out with a cybersecurity framework, their second release, which came out about 2 weeks ago. Very fresh, very up to date. Everyone has access to it online. There's a lot of online resources that are available to you. If you are a small business, I suggest strongly you work with the SBA to see if indeed what they have and advice that they can give you. You are not alone. That's the most important thing. You are not alone. If you are a government contractor, I would also ask the contracting officer for resources within the government to help you because they want you to be successful. They don't
Yeah.
want you to be attacked. And so there are resources out there that are free and are fee based to help you get to navigate. And I ask you to truly work with your partners. Use your insurance agent as a resource, as opposed to saying, oh my gosh, what do I do? Because you need the cyber insurance, and they have, chances are, a checklist of
Hmm.
what you need, and they evaluate you. And I would ask you to ask your broker for that checklist. So
Yeah.
before you go through it and get evaluated, so can you please just give me the checklist ahead of time so I can go through that and then make that a part of my roadmap?
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you brought up NIST because their cyber framework, their website has a really great cybersecurity framework. And when you go onto it, and we can put the link to it in the show notes, but there's quick start guides, there's profiles for small businesses, large businesses. There's so much information out there, and there's really great documents and diagrams to really help you get started. So if you were looking for a place to just even start getting educated about cybersecurity, I definitely recommend going to the NIST website and you getting started by just looking at what they have available there.
Also, too, is this is not just for business or enterprises, it's also for nonprofits. And believe it or not, for state, local, and territorial governments, Department of Homeland Security has grants available to you. Check it out online. If you are a state government, local government, especially local governments, are still trying to manage through this, and territorial governments, they're trying to manage through this and trying to, if you would, keep the data safe. And
Yeah.
that's really what this is all about, keeping your data safe. Those are your crown jewels.
Yep.
Let's keep them safe. And so it's not just for enterprise, but it's also for state, local, and territorial governments.
Absolutely. And I did want to just provide some of you might be wondering what NIST stands for. We've been using that word. It's the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a government agency, and they've got a really great cybersecurity framework. So that's what NIST stands for. And typically, when you engage with other organizations, they'll ask if you are, what framework you follow, and NIST is one of the more popular ones.
For sure. So no, that's a great resource. If you're a small business, I would also engage with the Small Businesses Administration.
Yes.
They have great resources. So this way, you're not alone.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we've had some really good discussion about building a roadmap as well as a strategy and how to execute it. And we've even given our listeners some resources to go out to, and we'll put those in the show notes. But as we kind of conclude the episode, I really want to make sure that we give our listeners some takeaways that they could take and hopefully take those as learning points. And I think the first one has to do with partnering with an experienced firm, right? Don't go at this alone because having somebody who understands the space, understands security it's truly important. And I think it'll help your success in getting this off the ground, or if you're already, have a security program in place, to really kind of getting it to the next level. And then I think that this conversation obviously is not meant to scare anybody, but really just to bring awareness. And you really don't have to boil the ocean to get started. You can start small, tackle the low-hanging fruit, and then build your program off of that. It's important to start somewhere and don't feel like you have to take it all on at one time. And that's why if you're partnered with an experienced firm, they should be able to help you with that. And Jeff, I know you've got this last one, which I thought was great, which is, harden your defenses, right? Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the example I always give is your car.
Yeah.
And you lock your doors, right? You roll up the windows when you leave, and you lock your doors. And most cars now have alarm systems. So you close the windows, you turn on the alarm system. Those are part defenses so that your car is not stolen. In some areas, you may want to use one of those sticks or lockable sticks for your steering wheel. And then in addition to that, you want to have maybe a locator in case your car goes missing. You can there are professional services out there where you can locate the physical car. What does all that mean? It means that you've hardened the defenses so that if you have a high-end car, you want to make sure that it's not taken from you. Well, cybersecurity is the same sort of thing. You want to be able to harden the defenses around your company, create that moat we talked about,
Hmm.
and really have several layers of security. It's important to use the word layers because not one thing will keep you secure. And there really is not much that can keep you truly secure. The best thing you can do is to harden your securities to make sure, pardon me, harden your defenses to make sure that it's really difficult for someone to take your data. And why is that important is because the harder it is to get into your data, the more likely, and this is what you want, the attackers go elsewhere.
Right.
That's what you want. It's there are no absolutes, right? You can't say you're going to be secure, but you can harden your defenses to a point where it's going to cost too much money or too much time for an attacker to go into your systems. They'll go elsewhere. You've won.
Absolutely, completely agree. And I think, my final takeaway on this entire topic is the worst that you can do is do nothing, right? Please, 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 even if like you don't enlist with a partner, at least try to use strong passwords, right? Like, let's not have admin1 as our password or 123, right? I mean, I think it's important that you do something, and doing nothing is probably the worst.
And I
Um,
end with this.
mhm.
The SBA, I just looked it up and there it is right there in front of them. They have a business guide called Manage Your Business, Strengthen Your Cybersecurity. And it's right there online. We'll make sure that the link is a part of
Yes.
the notes, the audio notes here.
Yes.
But there it is right in front of you. You have an ability, so you're not starting from scratch. Others have done it for you, and you can take a look at what the SBA offers and
Yes.
as a first step. And I recommend that you do that this afternoon, today, when you're listening to this audio. You take a look at the SBA.gov site, and they have a business guide called "Strengthen Your Cybersecurity." Can't get any easier than
Absolutely.
that.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate you coming here and telling our listeners about cybersecurity. And we'll put your information in the show notes too, so that they can contact you. But are there any last words you would like to tell our guests on how they can find you?
They can find me online at on LinkedIn. Just
Yes,
search on Jeffrey Englander, and I look forward to speaking to anyone who's interested to have a conversation regarding cyber and how we can best protect uh, if you would, your assets. I have many folks, including Sonal, who are great experts in either vulnerability scanning or penetration testing or assessments. Whatever you need, I have great recommendations. Feel free to reach out. The best place to reach me again is on LinkedIn, Jeffrey Englander. Just search and you'll find me. Send me a DM and we'll have a conversation.
Absolutely. And like Jeff said, if you do need help getting started, please feel free to reach out to Minerva as well. You can contact Minerva at let's talk at minervaconsultinginc.com. You can also go to our website at minervaconsultinginc.com. And before we sound off here, I would like to ask our listeners to take 3 quick steps. Number one, please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a new episode. Leave a rating and add a comment. And thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff, again for joining. And thank you, listeners. And we'll see you on our next episode.
Sonal, you've been very kind to have me as a guest. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.